Hello, I'm Bill Tellerico of the Tellerico Group, and I'm honored to be with you here at this Legatus Business Leaders Conference. Thank you for taking the time to watch our video and learn a little bit about how we believe we can extend the dignity of the human being into the profession of sales and sales leadership. It's something that's not talked about often. Usually people see sales as something that's kind of slimy or manipulative and something that we do to people, and it turns a lot of people off from wanting to embrace the profession. I'm fortunate enough to spend some time with the Duquesne University School of Business as an advisor under Professional Sales Advisory Council. And at Duquesne, they're taking sales into the world of a major and a minor so that undergraduates can see what really happens in the world of professional selling. Too often when I talk with these young people, when I'm fortunate enough to guest lecture there, they say, well, I'm just taking the class, but I don't know if I really want to go into sales, or I don't think I'm cut out for sales. And when I ask them why, it's because they have this negative view of sales as being something that we have to do to someone. One of our foundational beliefs here at the Tellerico Group is that sales is something we do for somebody, not to somebody. And this foundational belief, it infiltrates our entire approach, and it can infiltrate the way we embrace and the way we approach our relationships. More importantly, it conveys that there's an individual on the other end of this transaction or the other end of this conversation that is built with the inherent dignity and respect that comes only from God, and they deserve to be treated in a manner such. So we like to think of sales being not something that's built around manipulation and not something that's forced upon somebody, but something that is actually allows us to serve the other. This concept of servant sales allows us to see the other as a person and recognize to be effective, all I have to do is communicate effectively. I don't have to impose my will, my desires, my wants on them. I just need to communicate effectively so that I can understand their needs, their wants, their desires, and then connect a solution to how I can help them. And it happens very organically, and it happens in a very natural way when we see sales as not the imposition of my will, but rather meeting the other in their place of need and solving their problems, sharing some of the solutions that we have with them. One thing we need to understand when we enter into those conversations, though, is if we're coming at this from a real place of concern and a real place of putting the other at the center of the relationship, sometimes we're going to recognize that the solution they need right now isn't us. Right? It might be something they need to do before they can be ready for us. Or we have to acknowledge with an open heart that there are solutions that might be more pressing for them right now. They have bigger problems than the one we're trying to help them solve. And in all of my experience through my career and in working with others, I can tell you that when we share that concern with people and let them know that's okay, I'm still going to be able to help you. And maybe we even connect them to somebody that can help them solve that pressing need today. People respect that. They embrace that, and they embrace you. We always like to tell our clients, I don't care what your product is. I don't care if you're selling commodity cleaning services like some of our clients do, or you're selling some of the most sophisticated software in the world like another one of our clients does. Ultimately, we're all selling the same product, trust. Right? We're all selling trust. At some point, somebody has to trust you enough, trust us enough to say, yes, I believe what you're telling me. I believe that you can help me, and I'm willing to pay you this fair price to do it. And the greatest definition of trust we've ever heard and we like to use with our clients is trust is when our words and actions are consistent over time. So in other words, we say what we're going to do, and then we do it. That's courtesy, right? That's treating the other with just the common courtesy we would want to be treated with. When somebody promises something to us, just do it. And when we do that over time, whether it's sending an email later today, whether it's sending a proposal when it's asked for, whether it's getting somebody the name of someone else who's a provider that can help them, we build trust, right? And if we build trust consistently in this effective communication manner, we can't help but be successful. So seeing the other as a person, right, rather than an object, is critical to this approach. And what we like to share is, rather than push our agenda on people to be effective in sales and to practice this servant sales mentality, it's better to learn about the other, right? Because it's not about our agenda. We always like to say what they have to tell us is far more important than what we have to tell them. And we like to learn more about the other, not just by questions. And we've all heard salespeople need to be great questioners. They need to ask great open-ended questions. Totally agree. But rather than just thinking about continuous questioning, right, which is, again, almost treating the other like an object, like the program that we can press the button enough with and we get the information out of that we need. We like to think about having real conversations. And as a result, rather than just always asking questions, we like to extend invitations to conversation. Some of these great invitations to conversation don't sound like questions, right? Some of our favorite ones to bring into a conversation are, tell me about, walk me through, and help me understand. These are things that invite conversation, that make sharing very natural, versus the questioning that makes our interaction seem more like interrogations and makes it seem more like the questions we're asking are for our own good. The information we're trying to get is for our own good. We want to make a comfortable, open environment where people can share with us some of their hopes and dreams, some of their fears and concerns. But we do that by offering these invitations to conversation of, tell me about what's going on in your business right now. Tell me about how we're living through COVID right now as you guys watch this. So tell me about how COVID's impacted your business. Help me understand where you guys are. Help me understand what you're hoping to do in the next quarter. Help me understand what next year is going to look like. So tell me about, walk me through, help me understand, walk me through. We love to ask that question when we're getting to a point where we're getting to a point of closing with somebody and we're trying to understand their process, which is very helpful for the other, because too often in sales, we're taught, or our salespeople have been taught through some training, that they should ask somebody if they're the decision maker. I find that very offensive, actually, because, you think about, if I were to sit down and say, hey, Tom, are you the decision maker on this? And or is there anybody else I should have in the room when I bring the proposal back on Thursday? That conveys to Tom that I only care about you if you're the most important person in the business. That's not servant sales. That is not treating the other with inherent dignity and concern and respect. All right. Rather, what I should be sharing with Tom is, hey, Tom, when I come back Thursday with a proposal and we review it together, if it makes sense, what happens next? Can you walk me through the process? Because I don't know if Tom's always buying what I'm selling, right? So to put him on that island and ask him the question, are you the decision maker? We think of that as being a hero or zero question. We set Tom up to either over-represent who he is and say, well, absolutely, Bill, I'm the decision maker. I'm the vice president. It's my call. What we're going to find is when we go back to Tom next week and try to get some input and decision and try to get some feedback on where we are, he's going to probably run and hide. And he's not going to return our call because we set him up. We put him in a position we had to over-represent because he usually has to get some type of consensus from someone else. Or when I ask that question, Tom has to be a zero. And he has to say, well, no, it's not my decision to make. I'm just been asked to go out and get information. Okay. Why do we want to put people in those positions? Why not build them up? Right? Why not say to Tom, hey, when I come back Thursday, if this makes sense, what happens next? Can you walk me through that process? And Tom's going to be able to engage us as a person, not have to overinflate who he is, certainly not have to devalue who he is. And we're going to help him think through a problem of how he gets this approved inside of his organization together, be able to offer some solutions based on our experience rather than forcing him to walk through this on his own. So, when we share these invitations to conversation, we let the other know that we care about them, that they have value and they have importance to us. It's very important, though, and we see this way too often, it's very important to listen. If you're going to extend a great invitation to conversation, I know it sounds silly, but actually listen. Listen actively. Don't just wait for the other person to stop talking so that you can start talking again. Don't wait for them to take a breath so that you can jump in. And certainly, please don't just go through the motions of letting them speak and you're like, and really not paying attention. We have to prove to the other that we're listening, because think about it. They're sharing two very incredibly valuable things with us right now. They're sharing their time, which I don't know if there's any greater gift, and they're sharing insights about their business, which in many cases are going to be privileged and confidential. So if they're taking the time to share their time and share this confidential information, we need to care enough about them to treat it with the importance it deserves. And how do we do that? We prove that we're listening to them. All right, we let them know that we're engaged with them. We do that by making eye contact. We do that by maybe nodding our head in agreement and letting them know we understand. We do that by asking confirming and clarifying questions. And I think one of the greatest ways we can do that is by taking notes. I need to take notes. I have like off the charts ADD. If I don't take notes, I go somewhere else. So we need to let them know that we're listening by taking notes and staying engaged in the conversation. And that conveys to them that what they're sharing with us is very important, and we're going to treat it as such. So again, what they have to tell us is far more important than what we have to tell them. And if we put the needs of the other at the heart of our relationship, we can't help but have success. So as a salesperson, we need to let others know they're important. We need to let them know we're listening. We need to let them know we care. We've all heard the phrase, no one cares what you know till they know that you care. And we have that opportunity to let them know that through our effective communication. So how else do we demonstrate servant leadership or servant sales? Well, I think the flip side of this is not just for salespeople, but for sales leaders. We work with a lot of sales leaders here in our practice at the Tellerico Group, and there's no group of corporate America that is more underserved than sales leaders. There's no training. There's no coaching. There's just, hey, you were a great sales guy. You were a super performer, right? So let's go make you a supervisor. And there's usually no manual. There's no playbook for how to do this effectively. And we have some of our greatest joy when we get to work with sales leaders and help them understand how they can impact the lives of those they lead and how important their role is, not just to the business, but to those they lead. So let's talk a little bit about that. As we start to segue into talking about sales leadership, I want to share a little story with you about the best parenting advice I ever received. Because I don't believe any two jobs match up more closely than being a parent, maybe especially of teenagers, but being a parent and being a sales leader. The jobs are almost identical, right? We're telling people the same things over and over and over. With our kids, it might be things like, brush your teeth, clean your room, go to bed, do your homework. It's just repetitive. I have 3 children between the ages of 16 and 21. And I don't know how much variety is in our conversations, because it seems like we're constantly asking the same questions of them and constantly giving them the same guidance and advice. And it becomes very frustrating over times, right? You can ask yourself, why don't they get it? Why do I still have to tell them to brush his teeth every day? Well, you flip that to being a sales leader, and it's very similar. You're continuously helping your people understand how important it is to either go prospect or upload information into the CRM or whatever. We're telling them the same things on a continual basis over and over and over. And I think those two jobs go hand in hand. The best parenting advice I ever received was you have to parent the child you have, not the one you want or the one you were. And when I think back to when I first learned that, I realized how my son Dante, who's now 16, he was probably 5 or 6, and I realized how unfair I was to him, when he just wanted another cookie, or he would take a can of pop at a party, and I would look at him and say, don't you have any self-control? Because in my mind, I was parenting the child I was. So I was looking at him take that extra cookie at the party, and I'd fast forward to when I was in college making horrendous decisions because I lacked self-control. And I think as a sales leader, it applies, right? We need to lead the people we have, not the ones we want or the one we were. And it's a simple concept, but think about how much we have to see the other, those people on our team that we lead, as people, as individuals, and not as objects, right? So when we try to lead the people we want, what do? We set this elevated standard of perfection. And we say that you're not up to the perfection. There's somebody out there better. And we start to show them less time or maybe show them less attention. We tend to become frustrated with their effort or their results. And as a leader, when we have frustration over time, it eventually becomes resentment. So we start to resent these people, and everything they do is wrong. That's not fair because we haven't first embraced them as an individual to find out what makes them tick and manage who they are. The second is we can manage the people we were, right? We see this a lot with really high performers that came through the ranks of sales, whether they're an entrepreneur that owns the business and have been the primary rainmaker for years, or whether there's somebody that came through the sales ranks and was very effective and in their territory and then take on a leadership role. There's great danger in managing the people that we were versus the ones we have. And, oftentimes my clients say, well, I didn't need that. When we put in place either training or we put in place tools or whatever it might be, oftentimes clients will say, well, I didn't need that when I was doing their job. I have to remind them, very politely, of course. And I ask them and I say, well, remember, they're not you, because if they were you, what would we call them? It would be competition, right? If our people that we lead were us and they had the ability that you had and they had the success that you had, they'd be your competition. Instead, we call them employees, and we're responsible for leading them and coaching them. And that's what they need. They need coaches. And great coaches get people to do the things they don't want to do so they can achieve the things they wish to achieve. That's a quote from Tom Landry, who used to coach the Dallas Cowboys back in the 70s and 80s. And that quote means a lot to me, not because of Tom Landry, because I'm a kid from Pittsburgh, so I'm not a Cowboy fan naturally. But, you think about great coaches get people to do the things they need to do that they don't want to do so they can achieve the things they need to achieve. And if you're a coach, that's what you're looking for in your people, right? And I would argue, whether you've embraced this yet or not, you are a coach. If you're a leader, especially a sales leader, you're a coach. So we need to get these people to do the things they don't always want to do, and then we'll have great success together. And we have to connect their personal goals. This is that servant leadership in the role of sales, servant sales leadership. We need to understand and connect their personal goals to their professional goals. I one time had an individual on my team when I was still in private. Well, I was working for a public company, and I was leading the sales organization before I started our journey here. And I had a guy on my team that was struggling. And I asked him, I said, what's important to you? What are some of the big things you want to do in life? And he shared with me that the most important thing he wanted to do was propose to his girlfriend. And I asked him what was holding him back. And he said, well, I don't have money for a ring. And I said, well, when do you want to propose? And he wanted to propose at Christmas, and we were sitting here probably in like June. I said, well, let's think about this. How much is it going to cost for a ring? And we jotted down the number. And I said, if you want to propose in December, Christmas time, that means you need to have the final commission check in November, right? So we get paid on a trailing basis. That means that each month between now and October, you need to sell this much so that you can get this much commission and be able to buy the ring. He had a newfound vitality. He had a newfound vigor because he had previously been failing and coming in every day, not hitting his quota, not hitting his goals because they weren't meaningful to him. They seemed too big and they weren't personal to him, right? Now, you would think, he should have been able to connect those dots. He should have, but again, he was the guy I had, not the one I wanted or the one I was, and he didn't connect those dots, so I had to help him connect them. And he had a newfound vigor and a newfound excitement about making cold calls, about going out and prospecting. He had a new sense of urgency when it came to accelerating his sales cycles and following the process. It was because we were able to connect his personal goals to his professional work. Now, the back half of that story, I wish it had a great ending. He failed. He wasn't very good. His excitement was short-lived. He didn't have the consistency, the courage, or the staying power to be as successful as he thought he wanted to be. We eventually had to part ways. But it still was the effort, the idea of connecting him to those goals. And that's what's important, right? Because we can't just watch people fail as a sales leader. That's not loving. That is not loving, letting people wake up every morning to come in to fail, knowing they're going to fail, knowing they're not hitting their numbers, sometimes brushing them aside and focusing on those people that are putting in greater effort and are having greater results. No, the most loving thing we could do as a leader is help people be successful, right? Think about that. The most loving thing we can do as a leader is help people be successful. It's not loving to allow bad behavior. It's not loving to allow people to go down the wrong path and not do the right things. It's not, because we know where that ends. That ends with them eventually being fired. That ends with them eventually having to go out and be put on a PIP, a performance improvement plan, which is essentially 90 days to write your resume and look for a new job while we pay you. So that's not loving. Loving is correcting that behavior. Loving is engaging them and holding up the mirror and letting them know what they're doing wrong. That is loving, getting them on that path of success. So I ask you to embrace that, right? Because we know we're going to have people that fail. You probably have some in your organization that are failing right now. It's just the nature of sales. People aren't going to always make it. But as leaders, as loving sales leaders, we have to engage them as individuals, care about them enough to tell them what they're doing wrong, care about them enough to coach them up and get them doing more of those right things, and sometimes care about them enough to be honest with them about this isn't for you. I think we need to find a new place for you, either inside this organization or maybe you want to go somewhere else. But we don't want people waking up every day to go fail, because it starts to erode their self-dignity and their self-worth. And I would argue it then starts to erode their relationships at home. And it starts to erode them in their vocation as man or woman or husband or wife or father or mother. And that's not right. Right? That's not right. And we have to care enough about our people, just as putting that dignity they have first. We have to care enough about them to be willing to go meet them and embrace them there. So don't allow someone to wake up every day and go to the office and fail. You're better than that, and they deserve more. So that's our approach. That's our thoughts, our quick thoughts on servant sales and servant sales leadership. Hopefully it's helpful. If there's anything that this conversation triggered, any questions that you might have, please feel free to reach out. We're always happy to help. And again, thank you so much for your time and the opportunity to be with you today. I wish you and your families well. I certainly wish your businesses well and all those that you lead well. And may God bless you and all that you do in the year ahead. Thank you.